now. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ramblemancy, where John literally just shoved the last spoonful of his dinner into his mouth, and I pressed the button.
God damn it. I should have known.
Anyway, it
I
wasn't
should
that
have
funny.
known.
It wasn't that funny, but it made me laugh, so I'll take it.
I'm laughing from
Anyway,
inside.
Yeah, this
yes.
is what I get for making my dinner late.
Um, Welcome everybody to tonight's episode of Ramblemancy, where we are. I'm actually not. We're just kind of hanging out today. We're just chatting.
Yeah.
We're just kind of chatting. Before we get to that, though, I will say that we have just a quick announcement, which is that the series finale of Tomorrow is Dead season 2 will be this Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time on our YouTube channel, where you can watch it live. And then you can watch it basically whenever you like, anytime after that. So, yeah, that will be the end of an era, really, at Rule of Lore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that will be happening this coming Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And yeah, I'm excited for y'all to see this finale, and it was it was a huge it was a huge pain in the ass to organize everything and get everybody at the same time, the same place, and getting schedules. And then it kind of turned into a nail biter there at the end, where we weren't sure when Scrib's due date was gonna be. So
Yeah. We we were running up against the wildest deadline that I think I've ever had to run up against, which was the deadline of the miracle of birth. Um,
yeah. But yeah, so we got it done, and you'll be able to see the product of that this Monday. Um, I think that's it. I think Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all for our major announcements. Oh, Patreon stuff. You guys, those of you who are on our Patreon, and many of you who are not, saw that this week we had we made a sort of slight change to our $10 Patreon tier. We are, since we are doing actual plays, and the ones that we have done have not really been open for. They're all pre-recorded, so there hasn't been a whole lot of opportunity for feedback from the patrons. Most of what we're doing with the World Builder tier is that basically we're turning it into sort of like a TTRPG and writing workshop tier, to kind of stay within the spirit of our old tier, but now it's kind of changing to be kind of something that is a bit more broadly applicable than just to Rule of Lore content. So now there will be monthly organized workshops where we'll kind of get together, and it'll be either like a co-working time or actual. It probably won't be like co-working mostly. It'll probably mostly be like sort of bouncing ideas around and kind of giving feedback on things like that, and just generally talking shop about TTRPGs and writing. But then that channel will also be open for normal times as well, for anybody to sort of just do drop in if you like need help with any kind of like project that you're working on and need some like co-working sort of stuff. You can just kind of hang out and have somebody else will drop with access will drop in and chat. So yeah, that's kind of what the big change that we've made. You can read more about it on our Patreon, which I believe I should make that post public. I don't know why it's not public, but it will be public. You can read more about it there. You can also read about it on our Discord. I believe there is a post there as well, or at least will be soon.
it's for sure. I know we've put it in all of like the patron channels and stuff like
Right.
that.
I couldn't remember if like the general announcement had gone out yet or not. I know we've written it, but I didn't remember if it had gone out. But yeah.
I did.
Okay.
I put that in announcements
Okay.
this week.
Cool.
It was in
Cool.
announcements this week.
Awesome.
It's in there.
All
Also,
right.
I did.
Hello. Um. All right. Well, that's it for our announcements. So I think we can get started. What's been going on? What do you guys? Anything you guys have had kind of like in your brains this week? Just going on.
Oh man, I think a constant thing for me is finding ways to keep my creative juices flowing. Um, that's a perpetual.
I'm
thing.
actually I'm down to have a conversation about like creative process, like, and just
Mhm.
sort of that kind of stuff. It's something we've talked about before on Ramblemancy, but like a lot has changed since then, both what we are doing creatively and also like just our processes may have changed in that time too. So I'm down to talk about that stuff.
Let's talk about the juice.
The juice, brother.
The Ramble.
Okay,
juice.
cool. I was not sure if that was going to be received well by y'all. I kind of felt a little strange, but
The key to a good bit is just assuming it's going to be bad and saying it anyway.
Yeah. It's like it's got like Brennan Lee Mulligan shock jockey energy, like.
Yeah. Welcome to The Juice, the only morning show where anyway.
oh, there you go.
The only
The Juice.
the only morning show with high amounts of citric acid.
Well, that's all the time we have, everybody. We'll see you next time. What thoughts do we have on creative process? I will say for myself, my creative process has been pretty non-existent lately. Not my creativity, just my process has been pretty non-existent, or haphazard at the best.
Yeah,
Well,
I feel.
nice arms,
Man.
John. We have.
Sorry, yeah.
Are we doing this? Is this the thing we're doing now? Okay.
No,
I was
John's,
just stiff from working today, and this T-shirt really, especially because it's so dark, makes my arms look really, really great. That was not intentional.
John's got some guns. You gotta be careful.
Just stiff.
John, careful! You'll get us demonetized.
Oh shit! Bringing weapons on stream.
John, you're gonna turn someone on. You're gonna be upset about that.
Juice, join us in creative exploration. I like that. That's good. That's excellent.
Ooh.
Wow. I
Hell
like
yeah!
That a lot.
That's
Well
very
said.
good. I like that.
Wow. That's beautiful.
No, I think one of those
yeah.
things that I think something that I've been feeling recently, and I think this is a conversation that goes around well enough, is like creative confidence. That's something that just I've been thinking about the last couple of weeks, and like especially when you're in the early versions of making something. Right. I think like obviously creating in a vacuum is not good. Like it's good to have it's good to be exposed to other people's work, to talk to other people who do the things that you do, and to get input on your work. But I think what I've been experiencing lately is that like I need to figure out which parts of my process need to be Jonathan just bang something out, and which parts of my process like need to be the ones where I'm like actively looking for feedback. And that's kind of been like a new area for me. It's like I continue to like regularly make and put out games. Because it's an interesting thing, because like I think in the ideation phase, like that's a great place to have other people kicking around in there, like hearing other voices be like, oh, I think this would be really fun. Because I think that's an awesome place for ideas to kind of build and grow. I think like the place between there and I have a partial draft or like a rough draft of this thing, this little bit in here, I think kind of has to occupy the I just write this alone stage, because I think there's like pieces of doing any creative work, right, where it has to be like you have to make the thing. You have to kind of shape it more or less in the way that you want, and then I can get I'm leaning way back too. I'll get closer to my mic. I think it also I think too much input at that phase can kind of like muddy the waters.
I also find it difficult to actually like when we get to that phase of like just putting pen to paper, as it were. Having other voices present makes it just physically harder for me to do the writing part of things. Like I can't focus enough to make words do good.
Yes, that's sort of like the subtopic we're on right there right now, odds. But we're talking about creative processes in general, and like I
Mhm.
think what I brought up was just like creative confidence, and when it's good to have feedback, and when it's not good to have feedback is kind of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what stages of your process do you think are good for feedback, and which stages do you not want them? Ah, I'm interested.
I I think one of the problems that I'm having these days when it comes to creative process is that I'm not, I guess it's not fair to say that I'm not making time to just sit with my ideas, because I am. It's just that when I do that, when I do sit down with my ideas, my brain is just sort of there's nothing happening. And so more often than not what ends up happening to me is that I go my usual go to in those moments where like my brain is just not going is like I'm a verbal processor, so like I go to someone to, but then what happens then is I stay stuck in the ideation phase, right? I stay stuck in that because that's the only place where my brain is functioning right now. And so I don't know, my process is just kind of all over the place, and I don't really have one at the moment, um which sucks. It's extremely frustrating.
It is weird because like there's the difference between knowing what your process like is and knowing the individual pieces that work for you, but over time you change and over time your interests change,
Yeah.
and it kind of just feels like every so often you have to, in the way of like a smith making their tools, to suit the specific jobs that they do and their specific style, um, like you sort of have to do the same thing with your creative tools. It feels like how am I going to how am I going about this? Because like eventually I feel like you run up against a wall and you're like, wow, this sucks. I should do something different now. And it's all just kind of like throw all the pieces in the air and then pick up the ones you like.
Yeah. And I guess that's like kind of where I'm at right now. Like most of my creative energy these days goes into like TTRPGs and stuff like that, and the ones that I'm running. And I think uh I don't remember if it was on Ramblemancy where I think it was on Ramblemancy where I was saying how like I was like, wow, how did I get worse at this? And like when it comes to like coming up with ideas, because I have ideas, but I think the problem for me is right now, this isn't a humble brag, I swear it's not, but where like I've gotten too good at running TTRPGs to the point where I just sort of like can reliably just show up with no plans, you know?
Yeah.
But sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
want those plans in place. I sometimes I want them there, and I just for whatever reason I like cannot drag those out of my brain, and like that's kind of the place where I've been struggling recently creatively. And yeah, and then it always gets to the point where like even the threat of the last minute and the deadline of the last minute won't help me, because I know at the end of the day I can just show up and be fine. It won't be
Well,
what I imagined, but it will work.
it's a little bit like, and this is an experience that I saw a lot of people have because I was a music major. It's a lot of it's a little bit like when you're in like a small school, and you're like, first or second stand at whatever your instrument is,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like you feel like you're hot shit, and so like you don't necessarily like work or practice or work
Right.
on your fundamentals as much as you
Right.
should, and then you go to college, and you're going to
Oops.
college for music,
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to college somewhere where music is really big and important,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden everybody is really really good.
Yeah.
Everybody is really really good, and there's a lot of music majors, that, washout is a strong word, that change their career interests
Yep.
at that point, or who have to really really double down, and be like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do, but I'm gonna have to work at it. Because it's easy to do that, to kind of be like, okay, well, I know I can show up and do well enough, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've had friends who in this area who like have gone who did theater stuff and also or did dance,
Mm-hmm.
and then they went to a big thing in an actual like an institute where that's you get trained in that very like that's the whole thing, and they were a little bit out of the league. you know.
Yeah, they find out that they're actually so far behind, actually.
Yeah, and that's fine too. Just it sucks when like you're doing something you're made to believe that you're doing so great. You know, like you're the best or whatever. It's like that. Don't I don't need to hear that. Like I'm this is like for me. I'm constantly working. I'm not the greatest. I'm working right now. I'm always
Yeah,
like rehearsing. You know, whatever.
yeah.
It's
I
it's a work in progress.
I've recently run up against this very problem because I'm sort of in the process of, like, I won't even go into like a whole lot of details, but the point is that I'm in the process of doing like some like DMing workshops and stuff like that, right? And I approached this guy that I know who's like a young guy in his teens, and I was like, "Hey, I know you like DMing. I'm doing this thing, and like, but he kind of had a very skeptical attitude to it, with like a very like, oh no, I've been doing this for a while. I'm like, buddy, you haven't been doing anything for a while. You haven't been
I
around
love
long enough to be doing anything for a while.
Love teenagers so
I
much,
know,
dude.
but like, but I think it's see, to me that says you need to be here even more. You need to be in it even more.
hmm
Because yeah, the moment, I think with anything, the moment you reach a point where, especially in creative endeavors, the moment you reach a point where you feel like you know it all, that's the moment you need to start learning more. Because that's when you're in danger. You're in danger at that point.
Mhm. Yeah, I do feel like that's the part of the process where I think you have to start challenging yourself again a little bit and be like,
Yeah,
okay,
and I
hmm
think that's what's going on with me right now. Is I need to like start challenging myself again, but I don't know. I think I haven't figured out how to do that yet, and so I sort of feel like I'm just in
mhm,
this little weird creative rut. I haven't really figured out how to challenge myself, but yeah.
yeah, I think for me that's been my RPG club that I started,
Mm.
and whether or not a lot of people are subbed to that RPG club doesn't, it would be nice if people like threw me a few bucks a month to get monthly RPGs, I would be thrilled. They're probably going to go up a niche anyway later, so like uh, there's that possibility. But really, truly, the reason that exists is so that Jonathan will sit down and start to finish make a thing
Yeah.
every month, um, and so that it's just a place for me to experiment and play around, and it's something like consistent to keep me moving. And Matt asked earlier, like, how do you all write? Do you need to be inspired? Do you try to have a routine? And this is a conversation that I think I've gone around about before about
Yeah.
inspiration. I've really gone around with some creative friends before about this one, where
Yeah.
like you can't, if it's your job, you can't rely on inspiration to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much agree with that statement. Like if writing is your job, or even if you do it fairly regularly for like a hobby, like you don't have to wait on inspiration necessarily to strike. There are ways to manufacture something that resembles that lightning strike flow state. You're never going to be like you're never going to be more productive in any one
Yeah.
session, or more, perhaps you're never going to feel more creative than you feel in those moments, but you can get stuff done. You
Yeah.
can get stuff
hmm
done, and once something is on the page, when something is on paper, editing is a lot easier. At least for me, editing is a lot easier. Like fiddling with it, even with like a performance, like just getting up there, I suppose, and doing it, and then looking back at it afterwards, it's now easier, I think, to go,
hmm
here's things I could do differently, or here's how I can rearrange these pieces in my draft. Right?
Yeah. I
It's
yeah. No, I wanted to take a second because I saw we have a hype train going apparently, which is very cool. Amity, thank you so much. You're for 11 months. That's almost a year, and Nico 54 months.
Love
That's almost
that.
100 years. Thank you so much, you guys.
Oh my god,
show
uh,
never gets old.
it's just
never. It's
um
evergreen, as they say.
evergreen. Uh, yeah. Thank you so much, y'all. We appreciate having you here.
We love it.
Um,
We love you.
yeah. As far as how you're right, I think I've had this. I basically agree with everything that John just said. I have heard this argument also from the perspective of someone who is like, you should never rely on inspiration because it is like, it is fickle, it is, you know, whatever. And that's true. That's all true. However, you, if you're not inspired to write, why the hell are you doing it? Like, that's why the hell are you doing it? Like, obviously you don't want to rely, and that's the key word, rely, but it's, listen, you gotta be inspired. You have to be.
Like, what I have found is that if writing consistently, if doing whatever it is that you do for a creative endeavor consistently feels like a slog,
Mhm.
like you're not feeling like you're inspired anymore, you're not really feeling those like flashes of creative energy, what it probably means, and plus you're tired.
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
It probably means that you're a little burnt out, or that you're not doing things that restore your creative energy. I wheeled over there because sitting right next to my bed is this stack of books that I have been forcing myself to read again. Because reading is something that very reliably fills up my creative energy, both because it's kind of a restful, restorative exercise for me, and it exposes me to other people's
Mhm.
work, other kinds of styles of writing.
Yeah,
So, like,
yeah.
you know, make sure, like, when it comes to inspiration, like, you can manufacture opportunities for yourself to be creatively inspired, manufacture opportunities to have that kind of like bursts of really cool like productive energy. And the way that you do it is not overworking yourself.
Yep. That's the other, that's the
And
other side of this, I think, is the advice is like, that's like, well, just work. It's like, well, yes, but just work, but the problem is you can't work through burnout. And you have, so, but, and the key there is you have to recognize that that's what's happening to you, you know, in order, because you cannot work through burnout. And once you reach the point of burnout, it is infinitely more difficult to recover than it is to like recover when you realize that you're going in that direction, you know. um
if you're
it's,
starting to
yeah,
feel like every time you sit down to write and you're pulling against a vacuum, put the draft down,
yeah,
your session notes down, go outside, touch some grass,
yeah.
have a
Go
snack.
fishing.
Like,
I get it.
yeah,
I
take the day
especially,
off, go read a book. Like,
I think I especially think that this is true for people with ADHD. Maybe not especially, but it is particularly, it is definitely true for people with ADHD, because this is some of the most powerful advice that I learned for myself. Unfortunately, the worst and hardest possible way I learned these things, um, which is by basically failing out of college. And which I don't recommend that as a path to learn how your brain works. Cannot recommend that actually at all. But what I will say is that there is an enormous amount of power in quitting, and I know that that's like the opposite of like the inspirational pep talk advice that people often give. But no, there's an enormous amount of power in quitting, because sometimes the thing that you are doing isn't working, and in order to recognize that, you have to stop and step back from it, and that is huge. That's a huge thing when it comes to the creative process. You have to be, uh, you have to sort of be able to recognize that your path forward, it's a slog because it's not working, and you need to be able to like tell yourself, I need to quit, because I don't think you can, like, if you're focused on the path that you're on, it's much harder to recognize alternative paths. uh so
yeah,
that's, and that really is that. And also like what you were talking about, John, about you know, when you're writing, if you're writing something that is just truly like a pain in the ass to do, and it's just being, it's so hard or whatever, and to find a different thing to do, a different way to write, a different thing to write, a different whatever, that's also a very like ADHD. It's like chase the dopamine. Sometimes you just got to do it. It's not always the healthiest thing to do, because sometimes you just there's a specific thing that needs to get done, but sometimes you just kind of need to chase the dopamine because that is how you get it done. You know.
yeah. Outside like extremely deadline focused
Yeah,
environments, like
exactly.
sometimes some like I will, and this is Nico's talking a little bit about some advice that I think that I might have given earlier this week. which was can confirm I tried a new thing today when I was writing this morning, where I filled my outline with keywords that I knew I would have to come up with in the text I needed to write, and then filled the space around it with sentences to connect everything until I had a cohesive block of text for almost 3 pages that way. And that was similar to advice that I think I gave in Breeze Chat the other day, which was, for people who are very meticulous like me, I find outlines to be an enormously helpful writing tool, because I can trick my brain by going like, oh, I'm not drafting the perfect version of this. I'm just making an outline. But as I make just the bullet points, and I have ideas for what go under there, and then I fill those out, and then I'm like, okay, I need to finish writing this out. Actually, I have a complete thought now. And like, as you continue to do those small little things, like it balloons outwards into, oh right, and I should do this, and oh yeah, this belongs in this part of the draft. And that's just kind of like how it goes. The same can be true of like planning a session for Dungeons and Dragons too. When you're like working on another part of it, and you're like, oh, right, I should see this earlier in the dungeon, and you jump back.
Yep.
Up there. And, okay, I'll put this over here. You know, that's huge.
Yeah.
Odds also said, like when you were talking about quitting, or in calling something complete, and that is
Yes. I will, like, I bring it up constantly because it is such good advice, but also is just so punchy. But my rhetoric professor in college once repeatedly said to me, nothing is ever done, it's just due. And that, yeah. Which is more of a defense against perfectionism, but, and falling into the perfectionism vacuum, but, it's still, it's a good turn of phrase, and is a useful one to remember in a lot of, especially in creative endeavors, I think, because sometimes you just need to get a thing done, and it's not going at the point when it needs to be done, it is as good as it is going to get, because it just has to be done.
Yeah.
There's so many loops you can get stuck in.
Yeah.
Like, I have a great example, actually, because I was doing the editing on I Created a Loop today, because my editor, finished up going through the draft. And in early versions of the draft, I wrote flavor text for each of the different maps that you can play on. There's 12 total, after all of the stretch goal ones. 10 of them that I wrote, 2 of them that my guest writers made. So, for each map at the top of it, I wrote a little piece of flavor text. 10 pieces of flavor text, not too hard to write. But there's 4 zones in every map, and for the first few maps, I had also been writing flavor text for each of the zones. Which now, that's 50 total pieces of flavor text that I need to write. And so I had written about 10. And I had tagged it a month ago for myself. I was like, either you need to write all of these, or you need to delete all but the ones at the top of each one, because you've written those already. And my editor was like, yep. And I was like, you just finished line edits. I need to be working on another game. This is good. I could sit down and spend an hour or 2 writing up cool pieces of flavor text in this draft, but I need to spend that time doing something else. I can't fiddle with this forever. Good enough. Send it.
Maggie, I feel so seen. Maggie says, I always say that I need to do an outline, but my brain works better with start with blank page at last minute, panic write, get 100% for grade on whatever it was, repeat. I feel very seen by this.
I did this for so long in school too. There are 2 papers that I didn't do this on. Otherwise, I would do this. And 2 papers that I remember vividly that I didn't do this on, because I forced myself not to. It took a lot of effort. It took a shitload of effort.
Yeah.
And the absolute insistence of both of the college professors that were teaching those classes on meeting with the people in those classes regularly as they wrote the paper. For me to not do that, but almost every other paper in college, I wrote the night before, or the couple of days before.
I think also that there is something to be said. I agree that that doing working in drafts is a very practical and the best way probably to get stuff writing projects done. That said, I also do think that there is something to be said about I don't think there's a good reason to follow like that specific process laid out for you because it is the accepted process, because it's not like not everybody's brain is going to function that way. I know mine doesn't. But what I did find, unfortunately, it was after college, so not helpful to me. But what I did find is that there are ways that I can get my brain to work in drafts. It's just not in the like prescribed way that was given to me in school. There are the thing that I always had the hardest time doing is forcing myself to come back once I did it and go over it again. Which was that was the hardest part for me, because in my mind I've done the thing, and now that it's done I don't have to look at it ever again, which of course is absurd. But yeah, that is kind of the biggest hurdle to overcome for me personally. But I have found ways of sort of working around my inability to structure my thoughts in terms of drafts, go back, edit, wash, rinse, repeat. I've found ways of like working around that.
One less drummer. I will just say that there is, for many people, I think who struggle with ADHD, there's nothing quite like a metaphorical gun to your head.
Yeah.
Deadline looming, perfect clarity. Because now it's the only thing that you can think about. Your brain has just gone, that's the only thing in here now. And,
it's one of the things that I see a lot when people talk about ADHD, and it's also very true of my experience as well, which is that like we will be the coolest, most level-headed people in a crisis. We're the ones who like, unfortunately, it's because that's the only time we can function.
Yeah. Your fight or flight response has now forced this to take over all of your brain, so that's all that you get to think about right now. And you're just like, all right, cool, we're on lock.
Yeah.
All right, zombie
Yeah.
apocalypse, hurry up. Hurry the fuck up.
Yeah.
Where you at?
Yeah.
But every time you have to write a paper for something, someone's like, write a 500-word essay, it's due next week. Thursday night rolls up, it's due Friday morning. Boom, like zombie apocalypse mode in the brain.
Pro tip, life hack for college: give your syllabus to your roommate and have them feed you incorrect deadlines that are earlier than the real deadlines. Don't actually do that. That's a terrible idea. Yeah.
That's it. I've been organizing my workflow because I got a large bulletin board, and then in the middle of telling myself, here's the 3 things that are active, someone tweets a thing, and it sends me sprinting off to do another project and finishing it in 8 hours so that I could maybe help them with some layout mock-ups. Yep.
Yeah.
I will be like, I need to work on whatever game it is this week, and then somebody's got something going on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, but I could write a one-pager this week.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I could help somebody with the game this week, or any number of things.
And you know what? The reality is that's probably really good, because sometimes it's not process that's the problem. Sometimes it's just the moment, and sometimes you've got to make your brain do something else before you can do that thing.
Absolutely.
Well, like, I'd said a great comment above, which I think was to the effect of, like, my husband wrote a game in 4 days because he knew it would stop being funny after like very soon.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, sometimes you just got to do that. Like, sometimes you got to write while the idea is fresh and attractive to you. I'll necessarily wind up with that. Like, sometimes I'll look back at the notes in my phone and be like, oh fuck yeah, I remember thinking about that game. I should write that sometime soon for like a Zine Club entry. And then sometimes I'll look back at them and it's the most insane shit in the world.
Avoid scope creep somehow. Listen, if you figure out how to do that, please let me know. I get these grandiose ideas in my head, and then, well, they start out as ambitious ideas, and then from there I'm like, oh, it wouldn't be that much more effort to do this in addition to that, and just keep doing that until I have a completely unmanageable, completely, totally unfeasible thing on my hands.
And then you do that like half a dozen more times, and every single one of those things rapidly becomes interdependent on all the other extra things. And it's just like, nope, all right, I've made a system that can no longer support its own weight.
Yep. Classic. Uh,
I'm not a perfectionist. I'm a quitter, so it's not a problem I battle too often.
I
Yeah,
same odds.
yeah, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm a perfectionist. Quitting is the thing that I need to get better at. There was a sense of profound sorrow in me when I deleted some pieces of flavor text that made my game deeply asymmetrical. But I was
Yeah.
like, Jonathan, you have like 2 or 3 other games to be working on right now. Just
Yeah.
send it. Just send it. Recondo
Full
that shit.
send. Full send. Yeah.
Pickle, but I could do this or I could do that. I'm like, no, games like that game needs to go to print in like a month.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I'm sure that there were quite a lot of people in college that I frustrated because I got really good at. I think I've talked about this before. When you say to yourself, when you look at what you're doing and you very honestly say to yourself, this is not going to happen right now, and I'm not going to worry about it. And then just like I got really good at forgiving myself for not doing a thing that I was supposed to be doing. And like not in a like unhealthy way. I mean like truly in a way that was very freeing and it took a lot of pressure off that made it so that at a certain point I could actually come back and do it, you know? But like sometimes and it's usually at like the worst possible times too. It's like I've got 2 days until this thing is due. I need to be working on it, but I also recognize that that's not going to happen right now. And that's just got to be okay, you know.
Yeah. I think also this is something too that I remember seeing I think Shauna Germain talk about a couple of years like during the pandemic maybe.
Yeah.
One of her little monthly like newsletter things that she sent out. But sometimes doing the creative thing again, especially when it's your job, means that you sometimes following inspiration means that you have to do stuff at weird times. Like it can make it hard to, and especially when you combine that with any kind of neurospiciness. Sometimes it means that like you're going to sit down and it's like 9 p.m. or something. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna play some video games for a little bit, and then my brain's like, here's half a dozen ideas, really cool ideas for that RPG project that you've been working on.
Yeah.
Now that people have stopped texting you for the night, and everything's gotten quiet, and I'm like, well, I was gonna get in Discord, but if I don't write this down right now, I'm gonna forget. And so sometimes it means missing out on a couple hours of hanging out in Discord with friends, or sometimes it means losing out on an hour or two of sleep to get some stuff down in your draft because you're getting ready to go to bed and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna remember this stuff in the morning.
For sure.
So
Yeah. No, it's true. I think sorry, maybe I'm having a thought in real time and I'm trying to determine whether it is viable enough of a thought to express here live on the internet. um but I think it is. I think a lot of processes get sold to us as the end all be all that aren't necessarily right. Like I think that there are a lot of process, especially in school, a lot of processes get sold to us as being like this is obviously I'm not talking about science because the scientific method is a very real specific thing that exists for a reason. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm very clearly talking about about not that.
No,
I'm not about to get. I'm not about to be over here and just say to the internet, "Hey, you don't need you don't need peer review. You don't need, yeah, you don't.
Yeah,
you don't,
yeah, I know.
you don't
that's
need to peer review things.
you don't know the what? No. I mean more just in terms of like in terms of writing processes, in terms of organization processes, things like that, because those are all look. If you look at any part of this room outside of what you can see in just this little window here that I have cleared specifically for streaming purposes, um, about 15 minutes before I jumped on and turned my camera on, it's not like neat, but it is organized. But like nobody would come in here and look at it and go, "Wow, this is a very neat space." It's not. but but I do have sort of a system by which I organize everything, and I know where stuff is. I know where stuff is. Is it aesthetically pleasing? Not really. Not at all, actually, but I know where things are. And I think the same is true of certain creative processes. I don't think that there can be one prescribed way of doing something that is the end all be all, because not everybody's brain does that. I know there are people who would be driven insane by my organizational habits, but they work for me, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, like,
Beautifully
and
said.
this is I think the other big thing, because Odds is talking about this. Like, I always felt like I was failing if I was changing things, or it's not a and Nico also mentioned earlier, like, I feel like school kind of is responsible for some of the way that I think about this, and I think that there's something there about the way that people approach teaching writing and grading it, and like the kind of incentive system that this creates. But like, changing things or doing something differently is not like a personal failing, nor is it like a failure of your part. Like, people are just kind of messy, and we change, and what works one day might not work every day.
Yeah.
The more the more kind of stuff that you have to deal with on a personal level, the more true that is. Like, most days I can wake up in the morning and go, like, make a smoothie and some tea. I go water my plants. I come in, I sit down and drink my tea. If I have to go to the gym that day, I'll make sure that I eat something solid before I go. And then, like, I can come sit down with what's left of my tea and a big bottle of water, put on my headphones and some lo-fi, and then sit down and write for a little while. And that usually works for me. But some days, sure as shit will not. I'll
Some
do
days,
everything.
instead, you wake up in the morning feeling like P Diddy. And I'm sorry, I was
There it
I
is.
was like, yeah, I was like that meme of the kid with the vein on. Like, it's like I had to. I'm so sorry. It had to come out.
I could see the shit-eating grin.
I was trying so hard.
Oh. But yeah, like, sometimes I'll do all the same stuff. I'll sit down with my tea, I'll turn on the lo-fi, I'll pull up my draft, and instead I'll go do chores for an hour.
Yeah.
Because I'll sit down and be like, not gonna happen right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you step outside and scream at the top of your lungs. I live in close proximity to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I probably won't do that super often, because I think, and I have several very nosy neighbors, which I think I would rapidly become the talk of the neighborhood if I did that.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have the HOA sending agents to your door real quick.
I've sat the HOA sending Pinkertons to my door for noise violations.
No,
Okay.
Freeman, you would have the HOA. I thankfully live irritatingly just outside of the HOA. And when I say irritatingly, I mean irritatingly for them.
Yeah.
They
no.
like to think that they have sway here, but they don't.
You have no power here.
It's like it's the housing equivalent of going, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching.
Oh, I know, right? I know.
HOAs are, as an aside, Randall Nancy, HOAs are an absolutely bananas thing that exists in the United States. I'm not sure why we gave just regular people the power to evict their neighbors. I'm not sure why we decided that that was an acceptable thing for the average citizen to have power to do. It's wild to me.
Hi, I'm knocking on your door just to let you know that you're not using enough of our natural resources for aesthetic purposes. Anyway.
I'm sorry.
You're 3 dandelions over the limit in your yard.
Damn, you took it right out of. You took the words. John, you son of a bitch. I was literally gonna bring up dandelions, like, no joke.
Yeah.
Freeman and I had the exact same thought at the exact same moment.
I'm sorry, your petunias are glaring at me.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. That's my job. I shouldn't put that on the petunias.
Oh yeah, sorry, I woke up late this morning. The petunias are picking up my slack. It's
Yeah.
not their fault.
Um anyway, um yeah, I think
Scientifically speaking.
huh? Oh,
I'm just curious about. Nico said, scientifically speaking, it is optimal to do your creative work soon after you're waking up. I'm curious about that because I do find frequently that the most creatively productive portion of my day is if I get if I like wake up and pull myself together and start having breakfast like around 10:30 or something like that.
I'm definitely
You know,
more motivated in the mornings, but I'm more creative at night, which is a huge problem for me.
I experience the same thing.
Yeah.
The days where I am both feeling creative and motivated between like 11 and 3 are my favorite days, but they are too few, too far in between.
I just realized that I'm literally Varric from Legend of Korra, where he sits, he has like an intense brainstorming session and just yells out insane ideas, and he's like, "Whew, all right, that's enough work for one day. I'm gonna take lunch." And like, oh no. I will say I wanted to call back to something Odd said earlier about being kind to yourself in your creativity and creative process and productivity, because I think that's where we tend to get like on ourselves about not doing enough is when it comes to productivity. And I think that that's a huge point about being kind to yourself in that. And being kind to yourself looks like all kinds of different things. One is not putting so much pressure on yourself. Two is knowing how to walk away, and knowing when to walk away. It's also like knowing when to say, this is as good as it's going to get. And yeah. And just also, like, it's also when you just cannot make your brain work in the ways that it needs to, just saying to yourself, that's okay. You know? That's like, there's just as much, I think, that goes into the creative process, or just as much importance within the scope of the creative process, in not creating as there is in creating, right? Like, there's just as much of it there in how you handle not creating. Because I think, I don't know for everybody else, but for me, one thing that happens is and this was a huge failing of mine early on in college, which was that if I would beat myself up about not doing the thing that I needed to be doing or not being able to do it, and then when I would do that feeling, that negative feeling of like being mad at myself for that, made it even less likely that next time I was going to have a good time or I was going to be able to do it, because now I'm also anticipating the negative reaction that I'm going to have. And so, yeah, it's just, there's just as much importance in the creative process in not creating than there is in creating. Like, I think there's a lot of how we handle the part of not creating that is just sort of often overlooked. So, yeah, there it is.
Recognizing those self-destructive like loops that we get caught in before it happens, and like, yeah, no, that's, yeah, wow.
Just giving yourself a little bit of grace. That's all. It's not the end of the world. Like, there may be consequences, but they're not going to be the end of the world, and the world will keep turning. You will have more opportunities to create and to do things and all that sort of stuff. It's,
Well, the world ends though, then we'll go.
Well, then you're fucked.
Drive,
then you're fucked.
We'll go
actually,
we'll go into hyperdrive. It's okay. Zombies are coming. We're good.
You're right. You're right. That's it. That's exactly right. It's if you can't do it, it's not the end of the world. But if it is the end of the world, then you're gonna be able to fucking do it.
That's so weird. Whoa. Okay. Oh my gosh. Wow. I just really confused it all, didn't I? I really confused myself. I got some work to do.
Yeah,
Andy,
some work to do.
Andy said I used to do all my creative work while I was trying to sleep. Yeah, very frequently because it's again when my brain is occupied and distracted all day by lots of boxes of varying sizes filled with flashing lights that all demand my attention
Yeah.
for various reasons. And then when at night when all the boxes are off, suddenly my brain will be like,
You know what? And I will say, and this is something that Freeman has brought up on when our conversations about creative process before. But one of the things that I've been doing, not in the last couple of days because my
You
ankle
have to
hates me,
remind me.
but one of the things I've been doing within the last couple of weeks is taking time to just like go walk somewhere and then just sit. Like, don't be like on your phone and whatever, but like just taking somewhere to just sort of like have a quiet moment and just sit, because that's essentially what we're talking about here, right? Like that's we're talking about that moment when you're like trying to go to bed. That's when all the distractions and the noise and all the stuff in the day is like, you know, it's finally over. Well, I'm telling you, don't wait for that. Create your moment. Create your silent moment. um
it,
and this is
yeah,
as somebody whose brain does not do well in silent moments. But that's only true of my ability to produce. I cannot produce in silence. But creative ideation,
Mhm.
that is something that I can almost exclusively do in relative silence. I'm not talking about like literally just like turn off everything. I'm just talking like, yeah, exactly, Nico. Boredom is the wellspring of creativity. That's exactly it.
Mhm.
Um,
like and like what I think one of the things that I honestly would recommend is like, and it's the reason that I do stuff like this. It's the reason that, like I mentioned earlier, I sit down and my draft looks, I just static. My brain's full of static.
mhm.
I'll take my headphones right back off. I'll pause the lo-fi, and I will fold the pile of clothes on my bed and put them away in my closet. And I won't put on a podcast. I won't keep the music on. Go do the dishes.
Yeah, I
Don't
was gonna
listen
say,
to
do
music
something
while
with
you
your
do it.
hands. Do something with your hands. Like, and
Uh,
like, yeah,
garden, dishes, clothes, like fold clothes, household chores. Just like
yeah.
anything where you don't have to also worry about like, oh, I need to skip these ads or I need to tune that out. Just like
And
allow yourself to be alone
I think Odd
with
said something
yourself.
similar to this earlier, where like do it humans tending to be like function best when they have two completely opposite tasks that they're sort of bouncing between. And that's why, like I say, like do something with your hands, because I cannot tell you how like. And there's also something very zen about like doing something like, it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be making anything, but like just do keeping your hands occupied in something that doesn't require your like creative brain, and then just let your creative brain wander while you're sort of like doing whatever you're doing with your hands. Like that's incredible. That's such a powerful tool.
That's honestly a really, really good idea. Odds. That I should start making a list of the things that re-energize me. So if I'm feeling tired, I don't have to think of a way to feel untired. I can reference the
Mm-hmm.
list, and I think
That's a good idea. Yeah.
that's an idea that I think that I should take and keep on my desk.
Mhm. Mm.
Um, yeah, I honestly love that idea because one of the things that burnout will do to you is you will forget the stuff that you like. And it
Yeah.
sounds insane to say that someone like how could you forget the things that
Yeah.
you enjoy doing, Jonathan? But like it happens, I think it does, especially to creative people, or maybe not just maybe just
Mm-hmm.
generally, but like so a friend of mine said that to me recently. I heard in this, of all places, I heard this idea also in an AJR song lyric, which if you're gonna hear it anywhere in terms of current bands that make hashtag relatable music. The song's called "Come Hang Out" for anybody who's curious about it. Great song, but also it's talking about like come hang out. You forgot what you like. Come remember for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and that's important. Like you have to sometimes you have to force yourself to do the things that you like to do because you can forget
Yeah.
the stuff that gives you energy again.
I
It's
will
easy to
say,
fall into a rut.
Um, just as a specific recommendation, I will say, um, unless you are really, really good at it, I do not recommend cooking as one of those things that you do with your hands while you.
Sure.
I can't recommend that because I don't know about y'all, but when I'm cooking, I have a real problem with my brain is fully occupied with making sure that shit doesn't burn and that everything gets done at more or less the same time. So, yeah.
I think I might fall into the really good at it camp on that one because cooking tends to work for me. But I also
Yep.
Oh,
I will
cooking
also
would
cop to
be-
the fact. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just and by good at it, I mean like that it's like all the processes and everything is second nature to you, not that like you are very very proficient. I just mean that if like yeah,
Right.
that's all I mean by that. Um
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I know for me one of the things that I was doing. Sorry, I'm very distracted because like apparently is my camera lagging? I feel like it is a little bit.
No, not as far
No?
as I'm seeing.
Okay.
If it is on your end, it's not on my end.
Great.
So
Cool. Well, that's all that matters really. Yeah, one of the things that was always so good for me was when I would be like making like mini terrain.
Mm,
That was something that was like one of those moments where cuz like I don't have to my brain does not have to be engaged in that. Like I'm just like cutting foam and uh rolling paint and like pouring glue, sprinkling shit. Like that's not a very um heavy brain activity. I am lagging.
melting,
Okay, great. Well,
melting those sweet plastics of the foam, getting those nice carcinogens in the your daily dose of whatever they are, the gas that comes off of that.
yeah. Yep.
Oh,
I'm more of a baker with brain off. If I turn my brain off while cooking, bad things happen with sharp objects.
Oh, oh.
I think
well,
like
I get that. I'm the opposite because with cooking, at least I can wing it. There's a lot of things I can just improvise. With baking, it's so very specific, and my brain does not work. Like I make banana bread maybe once a year. That's it. My brain cannot function with baking at all.
Yeah. Oh, good. Everyone's lagging now apparently on the output end.
that's so
Oh, interesting.
weird because you're coming through crystal clear to me. It's so
I mean,
strange.
everyone on the call here is good, but for some reason Twitch is
Yeah.
is
I have a
taking its
feeling it's
time.
on I have a feeling it's on my end. I don't know what for whatever reason my computer was struggling earlier today for just like with just normal stuff, so I have a feeling it's that whatever that was. So, yeah.
The computer is experiencing creative burn.
It needs to go touch grass.
Yeah. I think that's the opposite of what my computer needs actually. My computer
Fair
doesn't need
enough.
to okay.
Actually, no.
Cool.
It might have just been a few dropped frames or something.
It might have just
like
been
that.
like a weird little like yeah, little blip or something. um yeah, man. I'm trying to think of oh, just I wanted to come back to the thing I was saying earlier about just sort of creating those quiet moments for yourself. For me lately what it has been is like going for like what I've found is I'm not very good at having creative thoughts while I am walking, but finding a place to just kind of sit and just sort of for me it's been like on the beach, just sort of sitting on the beach and just sort of like staring off into nothing and just letting my brain wander. um that's been it for me recently. um
Hmm.
there yeah
Sometimes. Oh, sorry.
no, that's it, that's all I was gonna say about that.
I was gonna say sometimes those things are still firing off. You don't even know it, and then you get back to the office or you get back to the house,
Yeah.
like wherever, and then you're like, oh, of course, duh. You know,
Yeah,
it's a weird.
it's
kinda
about
cool,
reframing.
actually.
It's about reframing things, right? Like you physically remove yourself, and then like when you come back, you're literally in a different mindset. It's about sometimes it's about perspective, really, is what it is. Because sometimes you're so focused on just like trying to do the thing you got to do that you lose the forest for the trees, kind of thing.
Of course, yeah.
Like genuinely, the ride to and from my gym a few times a week are some of the most deeply
Yeah.
productive periods
Oh,
of my week.
car driving, prime creative time for me. Like, big creative time. I just unfortunately don't have cause to drive very long anymore. So, for like
No, we
long
gotta go
periods
get
of time.
we gotta go get pillows. We gotta get
You're
pillows.
right. We gotta go get pillows.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. We gotta.
You guys, and I'm so Midwest. You guys get pillows. I get pillows.
Yeah. No.
Oh,
Do you also drink milk?
well. Oh no, let's not. No.
Malt. Um,
Give me the strength.
well, it's a great show, everybody. I'll see you later.
Oh, you got the fancy flapper.
Oh.
Flap cap.
Cap cap.
Okay. Well, sometimes I don't think about these things before I say it's called a little bit of improv. Sometimes it comes out a little dirtier than I originally expected.
A little thing called
Well-
improv, kid. You ever heard of it? Just
Uh,
swim in my fridge for milk.
no.
Well,
Ru-
milk.
Yeah. Oh God.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. I got you, odds. Yes, I understood.
Now I am gonna go downstairs after this and pour myself a glass
yeah?
that is 2/3 milk and 1/3 just rum.
Ooh, some spiced rum. No, now we're talking. Make it some Captain Morgan on top of that milk. Some
Yeah.
milk, some Captain Milk.
Milk.
Okay, well,
Alright.
okay. Anyway, moving
Alright.
along.
Circling back,
Yeah.
because
Uh,
it really doesn't matter what the thing you're doing is, whether it's alone or with people, whether it's quiet or noisy, whether it's simple or complicated, whether it really matters. You can do it on autopilot. Yes, it matters. I think some level of physical engagement matters, and that you can enter a state where you are kind of doing something unconsciously that allows the active parts of your brain to wander and look for something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. I think one of the things, and it was a sort of a habit that I sort of started during the I think it started before the pandemic, but something that I like to do is in the mornings when I am drinking my coffee, I like to have something that kind of makes me think playing, like something like like it used to be for the longest time it was like Matt Colville's videos, right? But then it sort of branched off into just any video where anybody was talking about stuff, you know? Because it just was nice to have my brain engaged in something. And I'm wondering if maybe not, because that became my routine, my habit. I'm wondering if maybe that might not be the reason that I'm having so much trouble, because instead of engaging my brain in things where other people are talking about stuff, I should instead be engaging my brain at those moments where I'm craving like brain engagement, engaging instead in like creative thought and that kind of stuff, right? It's just hard because when I'm drinking my coffee, I like to be I like to be engaged in passive activities.
Yeah.
But
Straight up been just drinking a lot of my tea in the morning, sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window.
yeah.
At nothing in particular, and that again, like, I feel like people talk about this all of the time, but I will reiterate it here. I think the image of a writer is, tapping away at a keyboard for hours, or writing in a journal or a typewriter, or speaking to, like Matt said earlier, like dictating things and then coming back and editing them down, writing them down later. And really, it's about 30 to 40% staring out a window, 30 to 50% marketing, and then like the remaining like 10 to 30 is actually
Yeah.
putting words on it.
Oh, I just remembered something. Sorry, this is super important. The whole getting up and walking away thing, it doesn't just have to be walk away and then come back to your thing. Sometimes it is literally just work somewhere else. Because just like physically changing your environment has a huge impact. Our brains are weird, and they get accustomed to routine in ways that we do not on a conscious level. So sometimes, like, I remember Cole would tell me that like they didn't want to like watch like TV or movies in the bedroom because that was the sleeping place. And if they did any like entertainment stuff in the sleeping place, then when it was time to sleep, they wouldn't be able to sleep because their brain's like, no, this is the entertainment place. And so like we like originally when before this room was done, we had like the like everything was kind of in the bedroom, including like the TV and stuff like that. And so in the evenings we would watch, but after a while we stopped doing that because Cole was having so much trouble sleeping. Um, and so like literally just working somewhere else. For me, I can, like I said before, it's hard because I cannot be productive in a completely silent place. So for me, work somewhere else might be go to a coffee shop. Like I know that's the stereotypical place for like writers to be doing their thing, but hey, it's a cliche for a reason. It works for some
And to
people.
God, I love working at my gym.
Yeah, yeah.
I go to a pretty nice gym. Like it's probably the best like gym for bouldering for quite a ways. It's here in the Twin Cities. And in addition to like a massive area with tons of walls for bouldering and like the little like, workout area and gosh, it's like a big co-working area with all kinds of different tables. Like there's some round tables with a few seats. There's a couple of ones, and there's these long tables that just sit on this little kind of second floor that looks out over the rest of the gym. Perfect spot to sit. I'll post up there with a laptop or a journal, and like I can zone out and watch people climb, and then go back to doing what I was doing. Like catch little snippets of conversation here and there. If I really truly get stuck, I can just snap my laptop closed, toss it in the cubby, go downstairs, jump on a couple routes, come back up 15 minutes later, pop my laptop up.
That honestly sounds like an ideal place to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's fucking great. I love
yeah.
it. There's legitimately a good chunk of people who will if they don't have to be in the office be doing stuff from up there.
Yeah.
It's a great co-working area.
Yeah, for me, the thing you said about like watching people, like that's a huge part of it for me. I like for me to be productive, I need to be in a place where like I can watch people, but that I'm not actively engaged with people. Because people are distracting, and when they expect you to be engaged with them, then that's doubly so. But I don't know. I like a certain amount of like stuff going on around me that has nothing to do with me. It like this is a stupid way. It just I feel like it helps insulate my thoughts, so you don't have a lot of like thought leakage.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a Faraday cage, but like for activity, for like thoughts. It's terrible, terrible example, a terrible comparison. Don't. It's like you need a lot of stuff going on around you so that you can prevent the thoughts from going to all sorts of everywhere. It keeps them in a nice little spot. It's like, the cage would be like, this is getting worse the more I explain it.
To break us out of this, Cam was like, John, I'm impressed you got those numbers to correctly add to 100% so readily. And the observation of that weird secret talent that I have prompted me to think about how I acquired it, which is a thing that happens to me all the time. So I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. Like, anytime somebody comments on like a little thing like that, I'm just like, how do I do that? All right, later, Nico.
Bye, Nico.
In Path of Exile, your resists cap out at 75%, and various pieces of gear will give you resists. But at one point in the game, you get minus 20 to all resists, and then at another point in the game, you get another minus 40s for a total of minus 60. So I spent a lot of time when I was playing Path of Exile balancing my character's resists, which is how I think I acquired this weird talent of doing percentages really well in my head.
It makes sense.
And also,
I love playing Why Am I Like This?
I love playing.
Oh yeah.
dude, it's fucking wild sometimes when you think about it. You're like, why am I like this? And you're like, oh,
yeah.
It's always such curious things. and the other end of that, the more practical end, not video game portion, is that my first job was working concessions at the local municipal pool, and we had one cash register that worked for most of my first couple of years working there, or like I had one cash register that I was able to use like regularly, and there were three people, one who had like their cash register way in their end, because that was like the window for outside the concessions area on the outside of the fence, and then there was the two windows manned by one person each, and we had our one little thing, which meant that very frequently somebody would be standing at that register, and they would be like punching it in, so it would do all of the things in to do the math for them. And I hated waiting, and I hated keeping my line waiting, and so I'd just do the math, and I needed grab the change when the drawer was open, hand it to somebody, and then when they stepped away, I would punch it in afterwards. So I got really, 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 really good at doing math for like, okay, you got $2.50 worth of stuff. You gave me $5, and I got really good at that kind of breaking things into little pieces so that I could add them back up to the whole.
Yeah, I'm very good at doing very quick mental arithmetic, which is very helpful in D&D. And my why am I like this is also D&D. It is, but like I also was like, it was something that I got pretty good at in high school. I got pretty good at doing like the arithmetic side of math and stuff like that. Another fun game I like playing is why wasn't I diagnosed sooner? Because sometimes the thing is, I was really good at math in high school. I always did poorly because A, I had a hard time turning in my homework, and B, I would showing all of my work, write down my process. I'd show all my work and then inexplicably write the incorrect answer.
Got it. Yeah.
All of the work was correct, all of the math was right, and then inexplicably I would write down an incorrect answer.
I would fuck myself up, and I would know what the answer was looking at it, vibes only, very frequently, because my brain knew how to do the process. My brain understood the concept, but the moment I began mechanically writing out every step of the process, I would confuse myself trying to do it a different way.
Yep.
Show it correctly for the homework.
Yep.
And then I would get the wrong answer, and I'd be like, well, god damn it.
Yeah. Yep.
The longer math got, the less good I got at it. Not because I could not handle the concept of the concepts of those maths. It was just because like showing my work for that long made my brain.
When we got to solving like quadratic formulas, I was like, That's where it starts to drag for me. When you're solving like linear equations, you're like, yeah, all right, and now x equals awesome. Next, and then you just keep doing that, boom, 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 and it was like brain is going, the dopamine is kicking in. But when you're having to see like, all right, I solved it. Now I got to solve it again. Like, that's what
I solved a fraction. Like I did 3 equations to solve one fraction of this problem. That will give me the ability to solve the next part of the problem.
Yep.
Oh. No.
And this has been another episode of Why Wasn't I Diagnosed Sooner? Oh God.
Yeah. He says, so I have a funny story about how I was diagnosed. My older brother's teachers forced my parents to get him evaluated for ADHD when he was in grade school because he could not sit still. The therapist said, your son is just an intelligent and active kid. He does not have ADHD. However, I would like to live with your daughter.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that is really funny, actually. No, that he's just an active young boy. Your daughter, however.
Yeah. The funny story about how I got my diagnosis is getting kicked out of college, and then somebody goes like, why'd that happen? So
maybe we should get diagnosed.
Yeah. Don't worry, I finished. I went back and I finished. But yeah. Like I said earlier, can't recommend that route for getting diagnosis. Very expensive. Not that diagnosis isn't already on its own. It's just, it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah, college tuition
Yeah.
here in the United States is a real jackass.
Yeah. Sucks. Oh my gosh. Um, man, I'm trying to think of. We kind of did the thing that we frequently do, where we're like free range ramble, talk about whatever we want, and then we pick one thing and then talk about it the whole time. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the way that these go. It's just
Yeah.
like a free range ramble for me is code for. We'll find out what the topic is when we get there.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's vibes based ramblemancy.
Yeah,
I like that.
Five.
We'll call it that.
It's also kind of a nice way to give ourselves permission to stray from the topic at will.
Yeah.
And if we want to have 50 minutes of conversation about creative processes
Which-
and burnout.
To be clear, we always have permission to stray from the topic. It's just knowing that we came in with one ahead of time psychologically makes us like want to adhere to it. So
Yeah. Because my comments seem to yank the conversation elsewhere for better or for worse. I think it's a net neutral.
Yeah.
Like
I think I sort of feel like we got to a point in the conversation about creative process where like the conversation was just over. Sometimes those conversations they have their natural conclusion, and I think we reached it, to be honest.
yeah.
Unless other people have more things to say about it, feel free to like bring it up. But yeah.
Like fire away 100% if there's still stuff that you're thinking about on that end. But I will also say I think it is a nice dovetail from the conversation that we're having. Like the why am I like this? Because we talked a lot about process and stuff like that, and understanding yourself and introspection is part of understanding how you work. And that's true of anything. That's true of how you organize how you organize your life. How you
Honestly,
organize
the
your social
why am I like this is actually, I would even say it's a pretty good like tangential, but it is still a good creative exercise, because the why am I like this thing it's like establishing the habits of like figuring out why and how you function the way that you do, which is key to developing a creative process.
I think a lot of our voice as creative people in whatever creative endeavors we choose to take on, whether that's tinkering and modding with games, whether that's writing, whether that's any number of things can be your like, creative kind of outlet. But I think it all starts with the stories that you tell about yourself. Like and that's essentially what that is when you look inward like that and you're like, why am I like this? What are these habits that I have, these things that I do, where did I get them? And understanding the pieces of yourself, knowing like where your own lines and boundaries are and the things that do and don't work for you. Like those stories about yourself, I think, kind of build into the way that you work, the way that you do whatever creative thing it is you do.
Yeah, and I think it's also important towards establishing those sorts of boundaries and knowing your limitations, but also not just so that you don't exceed them, but also so that you know when because this happens. Sometimes you use those as an excuse. I do it. Sometimes you use those as an excuse not to challenge yourself. I do it. We all do. Humans are lazy. We don't like to work hard for long periods of time. It's just a fact of like being a person. And sometimes we use those as an excuse, and I think part of learning where those lines are is learning like where they really are, like saying this is not something that I can make my brain do, and knowing the difference between that and knowing the difference and saying like, I probably could do this, but it's hard and I don't want to right now.
That's huge. Like again, I have an extremely topical example. The thing that caused me to be a little bit late to call today was the fact that I was making dinner a little bit late tonight because I had been doing just such a task. I got to do a lot of really fun responding to edits for about 2 or 3 hours, or yeah, for about 2 or 3 hours, and then I came to a point in my editor's work where what I had to do was take an item appendix of 155 items. And again, there are 10 maps in the game with 24 items each. You'll notice that adds up to 240. That means that there are various items that repeat in different maps that I've written, which means some items in that appendix appear many times. My editor, for the sake of ease, had edited the item appendix, which meant now that all 240 odd of those items were now outdated, and what I had to do was I had to Control C, Control F, go find all the places that had existed in my draft document and replace it. Is that fun work? No, it's really not.
Yeah.
It is really not. But I needed to do it, and like several times during that, my brain, it was like my brain was just like, you should stop now. This sucks. And I was like, can I not do this? Or do I not want to do this?
Yeah.
There's a difference between these two things. And it was the latter. I didn't want to do it. It's not fun. But I was like, yeah, well, sometimes you don't always get to do the fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
True.
Yeah. That, and so like, yeah, recognizing that is, sorry, because I know that I do it a lot where I'll use my my momentary yeah, I think where I'll use it as an excuse to like stop doing a thing that I don't particularly want to do, and I'll just be like, yeah, I can't, and it's like, no, you can, you just don't really want to challenge yourself to do it right now. You don't want to slog through the boring bit, or whatever it is, right? It's easy to fall into that trap. But I think that's where like being introspective and knowing yourself can help combat that, because then you can actually interrogate those feelings and actually go, is it this, or is it this? And then you can kind of go from there. But yeah, you do. I really think that introspection is a huge part of I think that's one of the reasons why like the stereotypical creative type is the loner, and we get these like misconceptions about creativity happening in a vacuum, like the creative is an island and that kind of stuff, right? It's because I think introspection is a huge part of creativity. Like, I'm not even going to put in the thing I think it is a huge part of creativity. Creativity is self-expression, and you have to sort of know yourself to know what and how to express that. So I don't know. I think it's a big part of it, and yeah, yet another good reason to just create quiet moments for yourself. Yeah.
And one of the many reasons that I have a steadily decreasing appetite for being advertised at.
Yeah.
Because like we live in an age, and I'm gonna get on my old man John soapbox here. We live in an age right now where people who want you to feel, empty so that you'll buy stuff, or who want to sell you things, seek to fill up every available moment in your life with little pokes and prods and things that will result in money going their way, whether various forms of advertisement, phone like push notifications constantly for apps reminding you to use them, even just messages and stuff like that. Like sometimes it's the reason that my phone has not been off fucking vibrate since like my early to mid 20s. I'm like, at a certain point, I just want, if I toss my phone behind me on my bed,
yeah,
it's just I just need to be disconnected frequently. Like if I go downstairs to cook, unless I really want to have music, it's sitting up here, and that way, like it's just me and my ingredients, and my tools, and my thoughts, and the two cats who desperately want to lick the cheese off the cheese grater.
Yeah.
Yes.
What we're talking about here, I think, I think it's important to talk about things in this way where we break them down, because you can say that what we're talking about right now is a certain amount of mindfulness, but that very all too easily becomes a buzzword that therefore becomes meaningless. And I think while I think that practicing mindfulness is important, saying we need to practice mindfulness is not that important. Talking about it in this way, where we actually like break it down, I think into like what that actually looks like, is more important, because I'm somebody who lives in a very I tend I tend to live in a very literal world. Like my interpretations of things tend to be very literal, and sometimes I can hear something, know what it means, but not necessarily understand what it looks like. And in what how to put it into any sort of practical form. And so for me, talking about the act of being mindful, right,
Mm-hmm.
is something that's important beyond just saying be mindful.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where people are like, oh, I should do some yoga, but like that seems like huge and unapproachable, or
Right.
like I should stretch more, and it's like, okay, learn a stretch,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
learn a flow, that takes you a minute, like a couple minutes to
Mhm.
do, right? That
Yeah.
kind of thing, like break it down into its component parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
Exactly, Cam.
breaking.
Mhm. Yeah. No, and honestly, I feel like all too often, especially in the world that John just described that we live in, we tend to default to the buzzwords, but they become meaningless, especially for people who like it's one thing when you're talking about it and you have the context, but eventually when all you're talking about is the buzzword, eventually it loses its meaning for the people who don't have the same context you came to it with. And then it becomes a nonsense thing that people say, right? Like saying I have to practice mindfulness. Like, yeah, okay, fine. What does that look like? What does that actually look like? What can I do to practice mindfulness, you know?
Honest to God, it's why I think it's why I make the kind of games that I make, really
Mhm.
well and truly. Like if I look at my two most recent, non like silly unhinged one page games, um, it's Terminus, which is a way to like it's just touch grass the game. It's go outside, take a walk, and tell a story to yourself about the things that you see.
Mhm.
Um, and that's very Midwest, and it's written in a very Midwest Gothic way. It's written in a very like I spent my youth riding from relative's house to relative's house on 2 to 3 hour car rides, staring out the window and watching the husks of like rusted old windmills and burnt out cars on abandoned farms.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mhm.
that's Terminus, I think, is very that, like, be alone with yourself and tell a story about the things that you see. But like I Crave the Loop is also like sit down and have a snack and tell a silly little story. And at its heart, what that game is encouraging you to do is to set your phone down while you have a snack and think about something else for a while.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yep. Well, we are at the end of our time here. Um yeah. This I think ended up being a very a thoughtful conversation about creativity and creative process, which is always nice to have every once in a while.
yeah,
Um But yeah. Um, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. Remember that the series finale of Tomorrow is Dead premieres on Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, live on our YouTube channel, and then will be available on our YouTube channel anytime after that for you to watch at your leisure. Um, there are changes to our Patreon, which you can learn more about by checking out the announcements in our Discord. And if you are already a patron, you can look at it on our Patreon. Many of you will have gotten it in the email if you have that option set up. It's there as well. Um, but yeah, make sure you check those things out. We actually do have our first Patreon uh, workshop and co-working time sort of set up for this month. So um, check that out. If you want to get on that, you should go and sign up for our Patreon, so you have access to the channels. That is on, I do not remember the exact day. It is on a Tuesday,
The
the
28th.
28th. Thank you, Freeman. Yeah.
After 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Pacific.
Yeah. So we'll
Pacific.
KWRX.
Ugh.
We're right back to the beginning with KWRX, the juice.
The juice. The juice. All right. This is a classic rock station now, where where we play all those classic rock from 2003. No, sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I did that to all of us. Anyway.
I've been sent back in time.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and joining us for this nonsense. We will we'll be back next Friday, and then I think we're going to have sort of a short couple-week break while we set up for John's absence during con season.
Yeah. Bria
But-
and I have filled our schedule full of little art markets
Yeah.
and conventions for the next several months.
But not to worry, there will still be Ramblemancy. We will have a guest host. For the first time ever on Ramblemancy, we'll have a long-term guest host. Yeah. Remember I talking about that? Yeah, we solidified it today. I'll talk about it. I'm excited about it. So the one and only Kate O'Sullivan, who has been a guest here on Ramblemancy recently and also frequent visitor of our chat. Kate will be here to guest host for a few weeks. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I believe next week on Ramblemancy we will be joined by a good an excellent GM and all around excellent person, Joe LaPlante, who is over from On Rune and Relic, was my GM for Star Trek Intelligence, and all around very cool person. So yeah, next week we'll have Joe on. I'm not sure exactly what we'll be talking about yet. It could be nothing. That's very likely that we will just sort of vibes-based Ramblemancy. But yeah. So yeah, we'll hopefully see you on Monday for Tomorrow is Dead, but if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody.